Armstrong. Louis Armstrong was born on July 5th of 1901 in the streets of New Orleans, right out in an alleyway, Poydras Street, and in New Orleans. But all his life, however, he thought he was born on July 4th of 1900. And what could be more fitting for a great 20th century American hero, Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong was born of William Armstrong and Mary Albert, also known as May Ann. But shortly after his birth, 6 months after, his father left the family, and his mother took he and his sister to live with her mother, Louis Armstrong's grandmother. And she lived in the roughest, toughest part of New Orleans, and that was Storyville. This is where all the speakeasies and the houses of ill repute were. And every one of them employed jazz musicians. And they did this to keep their patrons happy while they were waiting to be happy. So, and young Louis Armstrong had a little singing group, and he would perform outside the doorways of these establishments for nickels and pennies from the passers-by. And he would listen to the music. And this is where the greatest music in the world was happening, in New Orleans at this time. Early 1900s. And Louis Armstrong would listen to the piano players, the bass players, the banjos, the drummers, the clarinetists, the trombonists. But he most loved and he most could identify with were the cornet players. And they were the greatest cornet players ever. Bunk Johnson, who said to have a tone so clear that you can actually hear him playing miles away. Miles. He was so loud. King Oliver, who won so many cutting sessions, and a cutting session was that these establishments would put the bands on the back of flatbed trucks when business was slow, to drum up business, and they'd go around the streets of New Orleans. If two flatbed trucks met at an intersection, they would have a cutting contest to see who could play the fastest, the loudest, the best. And King Oliver, Joe Oliver, won so many of them, he earned the moniker King. And Louis Armstrong just adored this man. He would follow him around and parades and different stuff, trying to hold his cornet and stuff. And amazing. But when Louis Armstrong was just, I think, 14 years old, he stole a pistol from his father's bureau. And at 12 midnight on New Year's Eve, he shot it off to scare away the spirits from a new year. And this was just illegal then as it is now. And young Louis did it right in front of a policeman. And he just reached out and grabbed him and took him to jail. There the judge said, "Son, you need some discipline." Sent him to the colored waifs home. And there, Captain Joseph saw that young Louis had musical talent or musical ability and put him in the brass band. And he started out playing tambourine, then bass drum, and finally bugle, and then cornet. Within a year and a half, he was elected the leader of the band. It was a very proud moment. And when he got out there, he looked up Joe Oliver and traded odd jobs for Joe Oliver and his wife that Louis would do for cornet lessons. Pretty soon, young Louis was so good at playing the cornet, when Joe needed to take a night off, he would send Louis Armstrong in to take his place. And in 1917, Joe Oliver left New Orleans, and Louis Armstrong took his full-time gig in New Orleans' hottest jazz band. And he did this 1917, and we're going to do two from that. And this is Kid Ory's band, Kid Ory's jazz band. And in New Orleans, anytime you have a gathering of people, be it, election, a wedding, anything, a funeral, you always have a marching band, a brass band. And the dignitaries are in the front, followed by the brass band. And anybody that heard this music and this beat was welcome to join in and follow along, waving their handkerchiefs, strutting their stuff, strolling with umbrellas. That is called the second line. So here's two songs from that second line tradition. This is John Gillick playing the big 4 beat, or the second line beat. And we're going to do Kid Ory's song and the new second line. When you hear that beat coming down the street, everybody get in line to do that second line. Young and old, you see, looking and saying in the street, everybody get in line to do that old second line. Well, Louis Armstrong loved New Orleans. That was his home. And in 1917, why King Oliver left left New Orleans was that the Navy Department closed down Storyville for corrupting the morals of young sailors. Yes. So with the closing down of all those houses of ill repute, there went all the work for all the jazz musicians. So everybody had to look for different things to do. And Joe Oliver went up to Chicago, took his whole band up to Chicago, and found great success. But Louis Armstrong stuck it out as long as he possibly could. And in 1919, he finally had to leave the only home that he ever knew, New Orleans. And he joined the strictest riverboat steam line as a member of the Fate Marable Band. Now, Fate Marable Band, a lot of people think that Louis Armstrong couldn't read music, and that's not true. Joe Oliver started teaching him how to read music, and also he learned about music when he was in the Colored Waves home too. But he truly honed his craft in the Fate Marable Band. And he came up to St. Louis. He would travel up and down the Mississippi River, all the way up to Davenport, Iowa, and back down to New Orleans. I mean, this is when, Big Spiderdeck heard Louis Armstrong playing on the riverboats as a young lad. And Louis Armstrong first came to St. Louis, our hometown, in 1920, I do believe, on the riverboat, the Sydney, and came to St. Louis and caused quite a stir because he was a very young, handsome man. And at the St. Louis Hotel, all the maids and chamber ladies just absolutely fell in love with this young, dapper guy from New Orleans. But Louis Armstrong was really impressed by a St. Louis cornetist by the name of Charles Kreft. Now, Charles Kreft had a wonderful band, had the Jazz Maniacs, and actually there were 3 bands with the same name, Charles Kreft Jazz Maniacs, and he would play on Friday and Saturday nights in St. Louis, and 3 bands would be working at once. And he would have a limo driver drive him from one band to the other, just, constantly all night long. But he was a very sharp dresser, he was very handsome, ladies' man, and there's a legend connected with Charles Kreft that he actually stopped a knife fight at one of the places he was playing by playing a single note on the cornet, a high C on the cornet. And I had a chance to play with Charles Kreft III and a fabulous piano player. And I asked him about this, because it was his great-grandfather. And he said, absolutely, it's true. One night he was playing at a club, 2 guys got into a fight over a woman. Yeah. Believe that? Man, that's hard to believe. And Charles Kreft played a high C on his cornet, and that's when the club owner and the bouncer hit these guys over the head, knocked them out. And Charles later on went home with that woman, too. Because apparently that was his great-grandmother. So we're going to do a song that Louis Armstrong heard Charles Kreft perform, and also went on to perform and record in his career 26 different times. It is the most recorded jazz tune in history, and it's about our hometown. When we talk about our hometown, it's St. Louis, but when you talk about the blues, it's the St. Louis blues. o'clock tonight, it still would be too early in the morning for that night. You having a good time? We are too. We are too. Man, it is so nice. Hey, how about a great big hand for all the volunteers that put this stuff on? Honestly. And, oh man, it is so much fun to do this. All right, so we're up to 1921. 1921. It's a very infamous date in Louis Armstrong's career because two things happened. One is he got fired from the Fate Variable Band for fighting. Yes, absolutely. He was, I mean, heartbroken. He got left off back down in Louisiana and New Orleans. Didn't have any job or anything. But the other thing that happened is he got a telegram from his mentor, his hero, Joe Oliver, saying, Louis Armstrong, come up to Chicago and join my band. And Louis Armstrong did. But the train that he took up there was late. I think it was a United train. And he had to take a taxi cab to the club where the band was already playing. And Louis Armstrong, when he came into the doorway, he was just amazed. Because he knew Joe Oliver. He had heard his band in New Orleans. But Joe Oliver's band up in Chicago was doing great music. I mean, unbelievably tight band, energy. Louis Armstrong was just sitting there and just again. He couldn't believe how good this band was, swinging. And Joe Oliver spotted him in the doorway and motioned him up on the stage. Louis Armstrong was like, how am I going to be able to play with this band, let alone be a member of it? But Louis Armstrong got up there, Joe called out a familiar tune, and they went and they started playing together. And they played together. They played like a unit. Because Louis Armstrong knew every lick that Joe could ever play. I mean, this is the guy who taught him how to play the cornet. And Louis Armstrong and he, they fell into familiar patterns, and then they started just building upon each other. And so we're going to do a tune right now that is the first time you could hear Louis Armstrong on a solo, on a recording. And this is King Oliver's The Dipper Mouth Blues. Now listen to, now this is Tom Tucker right here. Yep. Tommy. Now Tom is going to play the part of King Oliver, and so we're going to call him King Tucker. And I'm going to play the part of young Louis Armstrong. So listen to the unit that we hopefully will become. And this changed you. New Orleans cornetist, and Louis Armstrong cornetist also. Now, a lot of people ask, what is the difference between a cornet and a trumpet? Tom is playing cornet, and he's actually playing a King sterling silver bell model cornet, and this is the same model cornet that King Oliver played on in the late 30s, in the mid 30s. Okay, a cornet means that if you look at a horn, this first part is called the lead pipe. Okay, now the bore of the instrument is the inside diameter of the tubing. On a cornet, it continually gets larger as it goes all the way through. And it means it's basically the shape of a cone. It's called a conical bore. A trumpet gets larger to about right here, stays the same bore size all the way until it gets to about right here. And that's called a tubular bore. And that's the difference between a trumpet and a cornet. Cornets traditionally are wrapped a little bit tighter, they have more bends. It's the same length of tubing for both these instruments. But that's the difference. Okay, but this wrap is more tighter because it has more curves in it. Okay, this has less. Cornet, trumpet. Now the difference is that a cornet is darker sounding because it doesn't have any lengths of tubing that are the same diameter, so overtones are not created. It's more of a dark, more vocal, like a violin. A trumpet, because of tubular, it has more overtones, hence it sounds brighter, more sizzling. And that's the difference. Okay. Hopefully that is right. I actually did that one time, and somebody says, what size do you play? And I say, I play a large bore. And he goes, you certainly are. All right, now let's talk about something else too. Let's talk about the handkerchief. In New Orleans, the tradition is a handkerchief. Louis Armstrong always had a handkerchief. Why? Because he sweated a lot, yes. But there's another reason. In New Orleans, the tradition was, this is where jazz was created. Everybody came to New Orleans to hear these jazz trumpeters. These jazz trumpeters, the early ones, didn't like being recorded, and they didn't like you watching what they were doing when they were doing the vowels. So they would drape their handkerchief over the vowels when they were playing. This is the New Orleans tradition. Funk Johnson did it. Louis Armstrong did it because, you know, there's that tradition of having that handkerchief, but he sweated. So there it is. Next thing. Also, too, trumpets. Joe Oliver invented this mute. This is called the solo tone mute. And Joe Oliver played a lot with mutes. He changed the way people played. Louis Armstrong also played a lot with mutes too, because he was a powerful player. He liked playing with the straight mute. He did a solo tone just a couple times, but that changed the way other trumpet players did, because when they heard this band, they were flabbergasted because of the tones and the difference that they would make with using mutes. That's when you stuff something in a trumpet, it's called a mute, or a stuffy thing. So, all right. Now let's talk about music. Joe Oliver's band, the Creole Jazz Band up in Chicago, was incredible because of two things really. One was they had a two-cornet front line. Louis Armstrong was playing cornet at the time. And that was really tight, that amazed people, but they had something else that was unheard of in the 20s. And that was a woman piano player. And her name was Lil Hardin.
That's right, baby.
That's right. She was a college-educated, classically trained, valedictorian of her class pianist.
Quite so.
That's right, who could, in the words of Louis Armstrong, swing a mean four. And she was beautiful. And Louis Armstrong was head over heels in love. That's right. That's right. But she wanted nothing to do with that big hit from New Orleans.
No way, baby.
No, until they were married a year later.
Love.
So we're going to do a song that Lil Hardin actually wrote and didn't get credit for it until shortly before her death in 1971. And this is Louis Armstrong's Strutless and Barbecue. And barbecue, by the way, is slang for a beautiful, long-legged woman with tasty ribs. All right, let's talk about Lil Hardin. Lil Hardin is really important to Louis Armstrong's career. Everything I've read, everything that said, we would have just known Louis Armstrong as a great 20s cornetist if it wasn't for Lil Hardin. Because Lil Hardin pushed Louis Armstrong. I mean, she molded him because that was what she did. She arranged for Louis Armstrong to take classical music lessons. She showed him how to dress, took him and introduced him to all the important people in Chicago. And she was not content to be married to a second cornetist in a band. She wanted Louis to be a soloist or leader of his own band. And so she pushed him. But also, he took to this. He really did. Matter of fact, he changed the way jazz was played because he started taking lessons from visiting impresarios from the Chicago Symphony, that the world's best people came to Chicago. And Lil Hardin arranged for Louis Armstrong to take lessons with these people. Louis Armstrong started thinking music in different terms. He would take and do the classic motif of, you play a song, you would modify it a little bit, you modify it a little bit more, then you come back to the original thing to restate it and take it out. That's the music form that has been used for jazz players for years. Secondly, he started basing his solos not upon the melody line, but on chord structure. So, for example, here's an example how to do it, the tune. Somewhere there's music, how hallelujah. A normal soloist at that time would play just what the singer almost did. Okay, that was what soloists did. But if you take and analyze the chords, play the chords of the song, and rewrote a tune based upon the chords, or did your solo, you would come up with this. So Louis Armstrong is the one who started this, and everybody changed the way jazz was played from then on. Also, Lil Hardin pushed him. He finally started listening, and he left Joe Oliver's band to join a New York band, and Fletcher Henderson was the band. Fletcher Henderson's band was the first black band to travel and play society gigs all up and down the East Coast, and played for very sophisticated audiences. Louis Armstrong played there and loved it, but he left after a year and a half because Fletcher would not let him sing. Louis Armstrong thought he had a beautiful singing voice. So, Fletcher Henderson, why did Fletcher Henderson like Louis Armstrong? Well, Fletcher Henderson, along with Paul Whiteman, at that time, were playing for audiences, and their audiences were getting kind of a little bit bored with their arrangements, even though they're great arrangements. But they both realized at the same time that they could plug in New Orleans tradition jazz players. These players can interweave with the parts that were already written and become new, exciting arrangements. Pretty soon the arrangers started writing for these people. And Paul Whiteman, he hired Frankie Trumbaugh on saxophone and Big Spiderbeck on the cornets. That gave him his excitement. Fletcher Henderson had young Louis Armstrong. And Louis Armstrong, he forced Louis Armstrong to change from cornet to trumpet to match his trumpet section. And he wanted that sound to match with Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong, when he started playing trumpet, that was the sound he heard in his ear, in his head. And ever since then, 1921, 22, he played trumpet. But after leaving Fletcher Henderson's band, he went back to Chicago, where Lil Hardin had Lil Hardin's Dreamland Syncopators, featuring the world's greatest cornetist, Louis Armstrong. And after opening night, he told Lil, he said, well, it's wonderful, but I think the world's greatest cornetist is my mentor, Joe Oliver, and besides, I'm playing trumpet now. So the next night, the band was changed. Lil Hardin's Dreamland Syncopators, featuring Louis Armstrong, world's greatest trumpeter. And he performed back in Chicago in 1925 for an amazing sum of $250 a performance. Now think about that. Give you in terms, 1925, you could buy a Model T Ford Roadster for $269. So he was making almost a car of performance, okay? And we're gonna do something else that happened because remember Joe Oliver and that first recording I talked about? That was done by OK Records. OK Records approached Louis Armstrong and said, we want you to record with us. And Louis Armstrong changed music again by saying, I'll do it under two stipulations. First, I get to pick the musicians that I'm performing with. And second, I get to pick all the material I'm going to record. The first time an artist dictated to the recording companies what was going to be done. And they said, okay. And that's how we got the greatest jazz recordings in all history. And we're going to do two of them for you right now. First one is called Once in a While, and it's from the Hot 5, 1925. The next one, some people consider, many people do, it's the world's greatest single recording. And that Ken Burns in his documentary said that any recording, be it classical, country, rock and roll, jazz, this song is perfect unto itself, the way it's performed, certainly by the master Louis Armstrong, and that'll be the West End Blues. So there's first one, Once in a While. with our first part of the set. And I want to do something that isn't Louis Armstrong, but I just want to thank you guys for coming out. And the second set is all more Louis Armstrong stuff. But here, this is our most requested songs. And even though we're doing the Louis Armstrong, we've had a couple of people ask us if we can do this. So we're going to do it for you right now. And thank you for coming up. And this is part one. So, and here is the band. And we're going to do Over the Rainbow for you.